Hi there. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to create some very basic camera effects using the camera tool. So camera actions are essential when you're creating an animation, and you may not even notice sometimes when you're watching movies, television, and cartoons, just how often the camera changes its viewpoint or moves around a little bit. First, I'd like to talk through an example clip here that I have, and this is the Peanuts character, the Peanuts cartoon with Snoopy and Woodstock and all that gang. And this is going to move really quickly because the camera changes a lot. So let's see here. What we've got first is Woodstock flying, and then there's the close-up of his nest. And he's alarmed by something, and then the camera changes again, and now he's talking. We get a close-up of Woodstock. We have a close-up of Linus. Then they all walk off. The scene changes again to a close-up of Linus. And then again, we see all of the characters together in the scene. So basically, in 30 seconds time, we've seen the camera change over and over and over, changing its focus from one character to another, or one object or something else, sometimes following along as the characters walked or what have you. Back to my example file in Adobe Animate, I'll show you how to do a couple of really basic things with the camera. So if you don't have the camera tool over in your toolbar on the left, you just click the three dots to open up the menu, find the camera tool, and just drag it over. Once you have the camera tool available, you just click it once, and when you do that, it gets added to the top of your layer stack, and that's where it has to stay. You'll also see this little camera control strip right here. Now, you've got the zoom and pan little icon here, and the camera rotate icon is here. It's generally not likely that you'll use the rotate, and I'll click on that once, and then I'm going to drag this slider back and forth so that you can see what that does. So, this isn't something I would expect that you'd commonly use. I'm not particularly impressed with the camera tool in this animation software, but you can definitely do some of those really basic things that you just saw in the little example cartoon. So we've got this all ready to go. The camera is in here, and we've got the controller for that. Looking over in the properties for the tool, it's going to be important that you know where these camera settings are, because you'll be able to use the reset, and that's going to be important. And so let me play through a little bit of this while I have a character talking right there. Let's say that when this character starts talking, I want to show the close-up of the character. So, well, he kind of starts talking right away. So I'll just start the close-up whenever. I'm at around 1 second there on the timeline, and I just put in a keyframe. So I've got my keyframe, and now I have to make sure I'm using the zoom and pan option, so I have to click on that to activate it. Then I can grab the slider, and I'm going to drag to get closer and keep clicking and dragging on that dot in the middle. I'm pretty good and close to the character, but let's say I want to reposition this. I just, anywhere here on the stage, I click and I drag. So I'm clicking and dragging up and down so that you can see it's moving around, okay? And I can get a little closer if I want. So what happens then is at that point, it's going to snap to the close-up of that character. So I'll go back to the beginning, I'll push on the play button, and then it shows the close-up right away. Let's say that after a little bit of time, I want to change it from the close-up back to where we started. So I just put another keyframe right here. Then, looking over onto the, I got to activate the camera tool and click on Tool in Properties. So I've got all these little reset buttons, and I can just click on all of them to make sure that I've reset the entire everything back to the way it started. We got the close-up, and then when it gets down to that next keyframe, it's going to snap back. A slow zoom in or zoom out can be done with this camera. Now, this isn't an action that's commonly used. If you're watching movies or TV, you would see that. But let's just do this so you can see how it would be done. I'll remove those other keyframes so that I can start from scratch. Now we're back to square one. There are no keyframes on this camera layer. So I'm going to go a little ways down on the timeline and I'm going to put in a keyframe. Then I'm going to go not too much further, maybe from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. And I'm going to put another keyframe. So at that 3 second, I'm going to zoom in a little closer to the characters. And maybe I'll reposition a bit. So in between the 2 second and the 3 second, you have that space. Over at the 3 second, it's the quick snap to the close-up. And in between these two keyframes, you can put in a classic tween. This will create the gradual zoom. So that's kind of distracting and should be used pretty sparingly. Another setting for the camera that's important to know about is over here in the timeline. What you'll see below the camera layer is that you have this little icon for the camera for each of the other layers. And if you click on any one of those, then the particular layer's items will not be affected by whatever you did with the camera. And I just clicked on that for my layer with the little bug that was crawling across the ground. And now you can see that bug is sitting up there in a very odd place. So it's not being affected by what I did with that zoom, that close-up, right? And then if I click that again, then the bug is going to go back to where it actually belongs. So that could possibly be something useful when you're playing around with the camera, when you're trying out whatever effects that you want to achieve. There are some other things that you can do with the camera tool regarding layer depth, color effects, and filters. But I'm not going to show any of that in this tutorial. Instead, just go ahead and experiment as much as possible with the camera tool. You will need to be using camera effects with many of your projects this semester. And get in touch with me if you have any questions or problems with the camera.